Good evening, members of council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Committee of the Whole to order. It's been moved by Councillor King that the agenda for the April 3rd, 2018 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest. Do any members have any conflicts they need to declare?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, so noted that there are none. Thank you, and I have none. Now we move to Community Planning and Development. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that Committee of the Whole receive the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file number 26T19-02014 regarding Phase 1 of Saffron Meadows subdivision. And the committee recommend that council approve the bylaw attached as Appendix A, subject to final approval of engineering submissions, authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the subdivision agreement between the Town of Pelham and Hurt Inc. for Phase 1 of the Saffron Meadows subdivision. Questions or comments for the report and the recommendation?
Get her done.
It's all good.
No comments, no questions? No. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak. The committee receives the Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to application file number SP11-17, located on the southwest corner of Rice and Port Robinson Roads, and the council approved the bylaw attached here to as Appendix 1, authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the Town of Pelham and Grey Forest Homes. Questions or comments?
No, this is as we discussed. Yeah.
Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director of Planning, I just had one question. Some of the side yards that butt up against Port Robinson Road, how will they be buffered from the street traffic? Will there be a closed board fence there, or a brick wall, or plantings? What
Thank you, Madam Director.
Mr. Mayor, through you, there are no side yards on Port Robinson Road. For Robinson Road, all the units front and face onto Port Robinson Road. There will be...
There's a side yard on Rice.
There's a side yard on Rice, and it will have some enhanced landscaping. And the board-on-board fence will be along its rear yard only, and then butt up back around the house. The two units on Port Robinson Road, they have a front facing Port Robinson Road, and then their rear yards are also along it, but it will have the decorative brick wall with the sign Saffron Common enclosing that wall.
Councillor?
Well, I guess I'm not looking at it properly here, because I'm having a hard time then figuring out where the front of those buildings are, because they sure look like sidewalls to me, but because the patios are in the back.
You're thinking about block, what is this, block H and block C, is that correct?
say
the
block-
two middle ones?
I can't see block C, for example, block W.
In the middle,
See,
the
that
the
must
two
be
in the
the
middle, is
front
that
porch
correct?
then, is it? Yeah, right in the middle block there.
Yes, so that is, certainly those are the two end units. They do have front doors facing Port Robinson. They have side entry garages. Those backs, yards are backing along Port Robinson, and there's patio there, but it's enclosed by a brick wall.
Oh, I
So
see.
if you scroll down the report to, there's a elevation image.
Yes.
So it's the top one?
Ah,
And
I
the
see.
top one shows those two units.
Okay.
And so you can see the brick wall that's enclosing the rear yard and with the landscaping.
Okay, and then the garage would be
And the
side
garage is
side
at a
yard.
side entry,
Side
yes.
entry.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. I think it's a great development. I think it looks fantastic, and.
And then the elevation below that with the block of 3 and 4 units, those are the ones with the rear lanes, with the rear
Right.
garages.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a tremendous development. I look forward to having it in our community, Mr. Mayor. I think it's going to be fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Others? I think that those were some of the comments that we said during the public meeting, actually, that it's certainly and I said, quite a huge improvement to what was proposed
For sure.
and fought for by the other developer. So it's a great development that's being put forward, and we look forward to it being built. I think the proponent is here because they do want to build it very quickly and get started on that.
I'm sure.
And Grey Forest Homes was here last time as well
Yeah.
during the public meeting because they are keen on moving ahead with this. So certainly appreciate on behalf of council the work that you've put into this and the interactions with staff and staff working together with them to
Yeah.
get it to this stage, and hopefully it will become a reality very quickly.
Yep.
Thank you. So without further ado, I will call the question on the site plan. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And now that will be considered at our next regular council meeting in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. And approved under bylaw. So now we move to committee reports. It's been moved by Councillor Lane. The Committee of the Whole received the Community Planning and Development report for March 2018 for information. Questions, comments for the director? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to our director. Could you outline the steps going forward with the East Fenwick Secondary Plan, statutory, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, as indicated by the presenter this evening, the kind of draft document has been circulated out to agencies, the region, the Conservation Authority, and then internally to town departments for review and comment. So once they receive those comments, they'll be finalizing kind of the policy sets for that, and then we will come back to council with a formal statutory public meeting. The goal is to do that either in June or July, depending on how much adjustment might need to be made based on the comments that we get. So comments, we're hoping to have those in with to the consultants within the next kind of 2 weeks. Then they will kind of do their work, get it out, and we'll schedule the formal public meeting. That will probably be, we have to talk about how we're going to host that public meeting and a venue for it, because we might want to do it on a night that is obviously separate from a regular council meeting. Could be lots of people here, so we just need to figure that out, but we're looking at probably a June or July date for a public meeting. And then following that, council would be in a position to formally adopt the secondary plan. It then goes to the region for approval. They are the approval authority, and they have their process, in which they then do a full review and circulation and report back to their regional council for a decision, and they try to do that within a 3 to 4 month time frame. The region has been involved in this project all along. They've had a staff member be part of the steering committee, both from their planning side as well as their public works side. So they're involved, and they understand, you know, some of the constraints on the in the area, both from a servicing and transportation network system, and also the environmental constraints that are present in the area, and then the requirements for certainly the complete communities and the urban densities that we're looking for East Fenwick. So they've been part of you know, the steering committee and very much involved, so we don't anticipate huge hurdles in terms of getting approval through them, but it is a requirement that they are the approval authority.
Okay, thank you.
So, in summary then, is it safe to assume November it could be law by November, December?
Yeah, our goal, Mr. Mayor, through you, is to hopefully get this through and be approved before the end of this year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? To that issue, just a quick question, or I guess a thought. Sometimes public meetings aren't great in July, so I'm hopeful that we can have it in June as opposed to July. I always want to make sure that we're able to hear from the public as required. So I know there's lots on the plate, but that would be my sort of feedback or my personal thought. Thank you. Anyone else on other issues or questions in the director's report? Councilor Rubiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just to probably a one-word or one-sentence update on where we are in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. It's still coming?
Comprehensive zoning bylaw, work is still underway with that. We're targeting May 28th as a public meeting date for that. Working with the consultants, there's some fine tuning that they need to do to the last draft. There were some of the number of the site-specific exceptions were not picked up and recognized, so we're working with them to get those in there. And some of the commercial rural zoning that currently exists in the agricultural area, there's a desire to keep that zoning, so we're wanting just to make sure that is showing up as well on the plans and in the schedules before we release it broadly to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to call the question on the director's report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Have a good evening. Take care. Enjoy your stay. Thank you. Now we move to corporate services. It's been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2018 Corporate Services Report for information. Questions, comments to the director, to the treasurer? Madam Treasurer, there's a few questions about some of the tenders. There's a few folks that have provided services to the town over the last number of years, tree maintenance, roadside mowing, etc., seem to have provided a satisfactory service. And now both of those have been won by other lower cost tenders. And I guess I'm just wondering, how do we ensure that through those tenders that we still have the same great service? I don't know if you're able to answer that.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have an evaluation process for procurement, and part of the evaluation process is a reference check. And so we do a reference check on all the companies before it's awarded. So that's how we ensure on the quality of the work, and if people have had any other issues, if we haven't worked with the companies, that's how we ensure that they're good companies to work with.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. Anyone else to the director's report? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor King. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2018 Fire and Bylaw Services Report for information. Questions or comments to the chief? Councillor Kersey? Or sorry, Councillor Rubiak, sorry. Looking this way. But
I
go
have
ahead.
one, but I'm looking to open the report so I can. I think we are talking about a gate, and I'm just looking for the reference to the gate. I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Marlene Stewart Street.
That's the one. That's the one. Thank you. Are we looking to put that into, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief, are we looking to put that into the 2019 budget, or are we looking at doing that this year?
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we met as SMT on Thursday and we discussed it, and we were able to do it this year. We're going to actually do it as soon as possible. So hopefully we can get it done in April or May.
So you're not looking at a great cost, obviously.
Right now, it looks around $3,000 to get it done, so hopefully we can get it done a little bit less than that, but that's what current numbers are sitting right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions are
Okay,
answered. Thank
great.
you.
Anyone else on Marlene Stewart Street? I was pleased to see that coming up with that creative solution. Thank you very much. I know that, and I spoke to the chief earlier, there's been I guess there's a group that goes around and walks around and cleans up there, and I wanted to talk to the chief, and I think the chief has reached out a couple of times to those individuals. So we look forward to hearing back on those meetings that you have with them. So thank you, and thanks to those folks that have eyes on Marlene Stewart Street Park. I think we had the Friends of Marlene Stewart Street Park a number of years ago, so perhaps this is a reiteration of that. Anyone else to the chief's report? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2018 Human Resources Report for information. Last one from Ms. Gilbert. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp.
Very quickly, thank you. It's your last report. So just quickly, who was our previous town benefit advisor? Was that Conway? Or
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was Mosey and Mosey.
Mosey and Mosey? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Thank you, and thanks for those savings.
You're welcome.
Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I also want to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Gilbert for excellent work over the last 3 years, and it wouldn't be right to leave you without at least one question, or at least a comment. I know in my experience that it is really, really hard to get some sort of a normal distribution of performance appraisal ratings. So congratulations. This is a good one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Call the question, Ms. Gilbert. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley. Committee of the Whole received the March 2018 Public Works Report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Lane?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment so you don't think
Please.
I'm sleeping over here at the end.
We know you're not sleeping, Councillor. Please, go ahead.
My question is on the, through you, Mr. Mayor, on the service requests from the public. I noticed that it's a trend, obviously, for some reason. I wonder if you have an explanation of why the numbers in June and July and August are traditionally so much higher than the rest of the year, and what they might be that explains that they're so high.
Thanks, Madam Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that information. I would take a stab and say beautification or parks, tree complaints. Pothole tends to be more a little bit earlier in the year, but they sometimes don't show up until May when people are starting to submit their complaints. But generally, trees, forestry complaints spike in the summertime as well.
Yeah, just through you, Mr. Mayor, I just can't help but notice that in 2017, well over 800, and that's up, 30-40% from the year before, and I just wondered if there was, something that we're doing wrong, or if it's just everybody's out enjoying the summer and they find everything to complain about.
Thank you. I don't know if it was a different spring in 2016. May, everybody stayed inside, and then all of a sudden it hit in June. I don't know. So we'll have to watch the weather. Maybe putting it to average temperatures, and you might come up with a solution. Anything else, Councillor Lane?
No, that's fine.
Anyone else on the director's report? Councillor Papp?
No, just to continue, I want to, through you to the director, I applaud the pothole situation. I have to tell you, in all my years, it's gotten the worst I've seen. And I know you guys are trying to keep pace with it, but it's hopefully somewhere along the line, but I can think of a couple of specific roads, Wallen Road and others, it's really starting to deteriorate. And I trust that we'll get back into the swing and get either some major patches redone, because I don't know about you, but I'm noticing it. Normally I don't pay much attention to it, but it's getting there. So hopefully you can give us an update over the months as to how we're progressing on that through you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. With roads, it's this balance where you're trying to decide on what treatment you can do
Right.
to extend the
Right.
life versus trying also to, as we've been trying to reprioritize the risks in our 20-year forecast, things move forward, things move back. So sometimes Welland Road is a classic example. We were counting on the capital work to happen. Because it got reprioritized, we're likely going to be able to do the east end of it up towards Pelham Street this year through our roads rehab. But the worst part have infrastructure underneath that really does need
I
replacement.
understand that.
We did note in there too, we've tried a new pothole repair material last year. We were ahead of the game on that one, and it's worked out really well. We got the hot box repair program underway, so we're slowly getting ahead, but the real trick is being able to scientifically calculate that treatment and life extension of the roads and the cost of that
Right.
versus the number of years it's going to get you, so we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you. Just as a matter, so that the public knows that we're not just standing by watching these things deteriorate, that we're making every single effort to deal with it as well as we can, because I do know that Welland Road will be next year. But also, I think for many of us, including my colleague, Councillor Durley, and all of us, when people ask us, say, we're not just standing around. We know what the situation is, and we're making and using whatever methodologies we can to repair them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to make a comment on that, and it's not to refute or argue with my esteemed colleague here. Really, this year, potholes are epidemic in
Yeah,
proportion,
I
and if you
agree.
go to any municipality, and in fact, I would say our municipality is doing better than most in terms of dealing with it. I think we just had a winter where we've had freeze-thaw cycles that have been untoward, and the roads are taking a beating, and our staff is doing a great job, and when you drive around
That's my point.
the neighboring municipalities, I think we're doing darn good. So I applaud our team for doing what they're
Yeah.
doing, and I know that wasn't your inference.
That was not the
I
inference
just
at all.
Wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Others on the director's report? Pleased to see progress on the pool. Will that, so this will all be done and ready for the season of the pool, is that correct? Can we just hear a little bit more about that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it will. We are, we have funding on that project, obviously, and it has its own deadlines, so we're making sure that we reach substantial by that deadline and then continue with the remaining outstanding work before pool season begins.
Okay, great. I was kind of driving by and sometimes drive down and see the progress, so it's great to see the rehabilitation of that valuable piece of infrastructure and facility for so many. Thank you. Anyone else to the director's report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Been moved by Councilor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole received the March 2018 Recreation, Culture, and Wellness Report for information. Questions or comments to the CAO? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. You got off easy, Mr. CAO. Thank you. Now we move to administration 4.7. The first has been moved by Councilor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole receive the 2018 election sign bylaw report, and the committee recommends the council enact the election sign bylaw hereto appended at their next regular meeting scheduled for April 16th, 2018. Questions, comments? Thank you, Madam Clerk, for putting this together. I note that other municipalities are doing similar things as well in terms of the changes to the Municipal Elections Act and the requirements for third-party signs. Questions? Who wants to start? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for clarification with regard to tenants. What is actually meant by, I can't quite find it here, but tenants being able to put signs on the premises that they are renting? That can be as wide or as narrow as I guess the words permit. What's actually contemplated?
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's our understanding, and we have a local area clerks group that has been discussing this as well. So their own units, they could put signs in the windows of their own units that they are renting. But you, as a landlord, one would be able to regulate signs in common areas or on the property, so yard signs and that sort of thing. So you wouldn't be able to prohibit signs in units that they are renting in their windows.
On a balcony, but not on an outside wall, that sort of thing?
I would have to check on the outside wall, but on a balcony, certainly it would be permitted, or in their windows facing out.
Thank you. Perhaps you can.
Yep, I will check
Thank
that.
you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Others? Madam Clerk, just wondered if one of the big reasons for the change is this idea of a third-party sign, which kind of is different than our existing sign bylaw. You know, you don't have a third-party sign sort of thing. But I wondered if one were to take a section like 2.7 where it says that election signs are not permitted on public property. Is that definition of election sign broad enough to include the third-party sign?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is reference throughout the bylaw that anything that pertains to a candidate would also pertain to a third-party advertiser, and those are also in the guidelines that the province released today for third-party advertising.
Okay, thank you. And so if this is contemplating a deposit from candidates for election signs, there would be a similar deposit then for, I don't know who, it wouldn't be a candidate, an individual, but whoever would be overseeing the third-party portion. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in Schedule A, third-party advertiser is noted as also requiring a deposit.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now to the Clerk's Department monthly report. It's been moved by Councillor Durley that committee receive it for March 2018 for information. Questions, comments regarding that report? Gonna call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next is Councillor Kersey has moved the Committee of the Whole receive the March 2018 Chief Administrative Officer's report for information. Questions or comments to both the CEO's report for March? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our CAO. In light of the change in staff with respect to the health and safety officer that we had hired, I wondered if there's been any consideration to look at an RFP and compare and contrast it as opposed to a full hire, looking at a contract situation.
This will be a contract situation for the coordinator position, through you, Mr. Mayor.
health and safety?
Yes.
So,
So the councillor asked about an RFP. What did you mean by that, councillor?
looking at a consulting firm that would be hired on a as-needed basis, or are you considering a hire for a specific term, like 6 months or whatever the project is delineated at?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, we did hire a consultant originally, so the audit that the consultant put together was a complete inventory of the workplace health and safety issues in the organization.
Right.
So when we looked at similar company, if you will, the same company offered the service to say, you know, we do the report, but we can also do the implementation piece as well. However, it was extremely expensive. So it made a difference to hire a term position in-house so that we could chip away at the audit on a full-time basis for a period of about, we're hoping, between 12 and 18 months. And we need to hit those major issues in that report so that we're staying on top of the issues that have been identified. After such time as the contract's ended, then we'll have to reevaluate and see whether or not we want to consider next steps, or if the work is done and that is what we needed to complete, and then the work then can go to the Workplace Health and Safety Committee internally. So that's part of the issue. The other part of the issue was that by having somebody in here on a full-time basis, they're working directly with staff to do a lot of the things that we know we need to do, and getting and working directly and side by side with staff, as opposed to having somebody doing remote work and then developing policies, etc. And then coming in and trying to implement them without that sort of one-on-one relationship with the folks that are actually doing the work. So those are all the things that we considered. So that's how we arrived at that. And again, it is a contract position that has an expiry.
Thank you, Councillor.
I don't know whether this is an appropriate question for open forum here, but what about wage scale and all of that? How is that being determined? Previously, it was determined because we had an existing individual, but going forward, how are we approaching the marketplace?
Looks like we have a question for you, Ms. Gilbert.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, looking at similar positions out in the market, we knew that what we had hired originally for, so moving our executive assistant over into that role, we knew we were within the market, but we know that there's a range for the market. So when we made our offer to our new candidate, the wage is appropriate for a new person coming in on a contract. I can certainly give you more specifics. It would certainly be something that I'd want to talk about in camera because it is somebody's off. And actually, you know what? No, it's right there on the posting. Because it was live. When we offer for a fixed term contract, we don't offer the range as we would somebody coming in full time. We offer one fixed amount. So I believe the amount was $55,000 what we offered our candidate or anybody that was coming in. That was what we were offering for the position.
Thank you.
So just as a follow-up here, and I don't know whether the thinking has gone that far out yet, we're looking at a 12 to 18-month contract. We heard during some of the earlier discussions that there would still be an element of health and safety going forward. Is the plan to merge that into an existing position in the town, that somebody would take over the updating and keeping up with the legislation and all of that, or would we be looking at hiring a part-time individual to do that? Or maybe that question hasn't been answered or in fullness yet. I just
Okay,
wanted
Mr.
to get the
Sino?
picture.
We don't know.
I see.
We honestly don't know. We're going to have to go through the first phase of the project, see how much or how little of the audit we can knock off, and that will really determine next steps. We're right at this point, we're optimistic we're going to be able to bang off a lot of it, and that's why we've opted for this. But if there's things that come up that we're not prepared for, we may have to look at either extending the contract, or we may look at designating existing staff and amending a job description, or we may look at the committee. So there's a number of different options there, but be frank, we haven't turned our heads to that yet. So.
Just as a follow-up, I just wondered whether there was an element within the contract that would lead to training of our own staff and the department heads in terms of health and safety and management of their own departments, which would obviate the need of having an overall supervisor type of thing, if that was incorporated into the supervisory position.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, are you able to answer the councillor's question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. The town already has a very solid culture of health and safety. Our Health and Safety Committee is very active and very educated. What we need this position for is to just get that movement on the audit and to help us just get some work done. I would fully expect that once this work is done, that because of this ownership of health and safety that we have already in the town, that the leaders in the departments and the staff know their obligation to a safe environment as well. So we do some great training on that already. So I would fully anticipate that once the project is done, then the leaders will absolutely know what the expectation is and be able to maintain it, because again, the willingness is there. We just need a bit of a push.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you. Anyone else to other parts of the CEO's report? Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO, for including information there about the fizzling out of the issue at the region regarding Infrastructure Ontario and how that happened and functioned. I'm pleased that has now been resolved, and that the allegations that were lodged against the town were essentially disproved because of everybody checking into this, KPMG, Infrastructure Ontario, et cetera. So I'm pleased that that's now run its course, and we look forward to this being onward and upward in the opening of the new center, and concentrating on what's extremely important, which is the community coming together to the new center, to this being a gathering place for the community. Going to call the question on the CAO's report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Lane. This regular meeting of committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, April 16th, following council. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.